Mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts. How do we like our martial arts? With a little Vinnie Sigs, baby! Yeah!
Oh, I didn't know it was coming. But I liked it. What is up, my friends? Hope you're out there just having a hell of a day, crushing it this week. My name is Shaun Al-Shatti, and welcome to the UFC 301 preview show here on MMA Fighting. As always, we appreciate y'all for joining us. And of course, we don't do these things alone. Joining me today are the two best friends, the brilliant minds behind On to the Next One. First, the Prince of Positivity. He is the King in the North. He is Alexandre Pantoja.
Oh, hey guys. UFC 301. Let's talk about it. I'm excited.
And the main man, the voice of the MMA Fighting Podcast Network, your friend and mine, Mike Heck, Pundit Mike Heck, making his long way to return.
You know it's a big event if Pundit Mike is here, so ready to talk UFC 301, maybe the, how should I phrase it, the least buzzworthy pay-per-view, maybe of all time? Like, it's crazy how little buzz this event has.
That's one way to put it. And of course, we would be nothing without the most ferocious, the most terrifying producer in the business. He's fresh off winning another smoker. He is the undefeated, the violent E. Casey Layden, man in the boards. Look at that man. Ferocious. Absolutely ferocious. So fellas, UFC 301 is upon us. Let's dive in. It's not a secret. This is not UFC 300. That sits before us, gentlemen. It is a fight card that was supposed to be headlined by Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. A fight card that I think suddenly makes a lot more sense if Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill is atop this bill. But alas, the UFC had a situation. They had to rob Peter to save Paul with UFC 300. We all understood what was happening. We understood the deal. Good times were had. And now it's time to come, or now the time I should say has come to pay that bill. So Mike, I want to start with you. Put on your promoter hat. You are Dana White, joining the Bald Brethren, of course, our fellow Bald brother. Give me the pitch. Sell me on why I, the loyal, paying UFC customer, should part with my precious $80 on this Saturday night to enjoy UFC 301.
I mean, if I'm going to be Dana White, I have to lie. And I don't know if I could actually even pretend to do that right now. Look, I totally understand why you don't want to spend $80 on this, especially we're coming off 300. 302 is June 1st. Quality card, big stars in the co-main and the main event. Conor McGregor's return, UFC 303. So you're going to have to par with $160 just in June alone. And if you're one of those crazy people that's like, you know what? I'm going to buy boxing on June 1st, like the big fights, and even the Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz fights. You might be spending $240 just on June 1st alone. Then we head into July. Like, you're going to spend a lot of money. So if there's one card you probably are like, maybe I'll skip this one, it's probably this one. However, I do think that this is going to be a fun watch. I think it's going to be a pretty easy watch, especially in the main card. I think we're going to get some finishes. I think some of these fights are going to end very, very quickly. We get Jose Aldo's entrance as the King of Rio in Rio, fighting Jonathan Martinez, the silence behind the violence. We have an intriguing main event that when it was first booked, everyone started scratching their heads. And then the closer we get to this fight, we're like, man, can little Stevie Erceg, Vinnie Sigs, in his fourth UFC fight in 11 months with the promotion, be the guy to finish the unfinishable Alexandre Pantoja and somehow bring this title back to Perth, Western Australia? Could Steve Erceg, who bought a blue polo shirt probably from Target before heading over to Rio de Janeiro for his first face-off with Alexandre Pantoja in the mountains, could be our UFC champion? Could this guy become a star? I have these questions, Shaheen Al-Shatti, and again, totally understand why you don't want to par with $80, but I will also say, if this card was pushed to UFC St. Louis, I think people would be a lot more excited about it. I think there are some bangers on this card. lightweight banger in particular, Elvis Brenner and Miktabek Oralby. I think that's my favorite fight on the entire card. I think the main card fights are somewhat intriguing and will be finished quickly. I don't think this is going to be a bad watch, but I totally understand if you want to keep your $80 here.
So your Dana White pitch is, it's okay if you don't watch it. That's fine. That's actually very Dana White.
That's
as
what
you
he
were
would say.
speaking, yeah, that is very Dana White, actually. And as you were speaking, the chat was just littered with pirate flags and mentions of, various websites of ill repute.
Yeah.
So
the poll is not going well, Shaheen. I put up a poll specifically worded, will you be paying money to watch UFC 301? 11% yes. 11% yes. It's not going
and
great.
And let me just say, if you don't want to be the illegal streamer, join the watch party. I can tell you right now, Connor and I are going to have more fun watching UFC 301 than probably anybody in the world. So join us and have fun with us if you don't want to spend $80.
Now that's a pitch. That's what I'm talking about. Now that's a pitch. AK, This does feel like a blip, like Mike said. I mean, the next two, 302, 303, those are like sizable steps up from this. Returns to form, you could say. Maybe not loaded cards, but I think very solid pay-per-views, main events that are going to draw a lot of eyeballs. For you, in your mind, is 301 what we're about to get? Is this the nadir for 2024? Like, is this the low point, the least name attraction we're going to get on an $80 pay-per-view all year? Like an understandable circumstance, but that it's only up from here? Or do you think this is happening again?
Yeah, no, I think this has to be the nadir, because if we're just looking ahead to fights we might get, I think we're still assuming John Jones will come back at some point. Leon Edwards is going to fight someone. He's going to fight someone. He's going to defend that welterweight title against someone. I know Leon's not like the biggest draw, but the welterweight title has a great history. I think it's still held in high esteem. That probably ends up on, again, a card with another title fight. We think Tom Aspinall might defend the interim title. We'll probably see Alex Pereira again before the end of the year. Grasso and Shevchenko 3 is going to be out there somewhere. And Izzy, we think Izzy's going to come back and probably fight DDP. So, again, I know those aren't all going to be on separate events. Some of those will be on the same card. But, I mean, so there's only however many pay-per-views there are left. It's very unlikely that we have a card as lacking in star power as this one is. I thought Mike broke it down beautifully, certainly about whether you should buy this or not. And I, even as a Prince of Positivity and someone who I think this card is fine. It's just, as Mike said, it's not really pay-per-view quality, especially compared to 299, 300 and with what's to come. But my tact in selling this was more, if you're someone who ritually buys every UFC pay-per-view anyway, like, here's how not to feel bad about it. Like, that's kind of my style. If you're on the fence, I don't think there's a way I can tilt you over to the other side to buy. I wouldn't be responsible. I'm not UFC PR. I'm not here to tell you to buy every pay-per-view. If you have a budget and you only buy like 6 a year, this probably isn't going to be one of them, and that's perfectly fine. You shouldn't feel bad. I don't know if you're missing anything crazy. If you're someone who's buying it anyway and you're just kind of like cursing yourself for, being in this, having this addiction, again, Alex, I think Pantoja's a really entertaining champion. The fight with Moreno was awesome. The fight with Royale turned out pretty good by the end, started a little slow. And before that, it's finishing people left and right. I think Pantoja's a great champion. You might see a great upset. You might see the beginning of the Steve Erceg era. I don't know. And that's always compelling. Jose Aldo, if he wins, certainly you're going to tell yourself, man, I wish I watched that live. Yes, you can see great coverage on MayFighting.com. You'll see an incredible reaction from Mike and GC on the watch party. But again, if you paid for it, you're going to feel very justified that if you see Aldo pick up a decision or knock Jonathan Martinez out, you'll be like, yes, this was worth, that one moment was worth my money. And then you've got Vitor Petrino, Kyle Braulio. If you believe they're the real deal, you're on the ground floor of this. You've seen some big fights. This will be the biggest win of Petrino's career if he pulls it off. Same for Kyle, I would say. And Michel Pereira, the Shogun Revenge Tour. I mean, certainly if I had spent money and I see him destroy Iro Pereira and avenge Shogun and just give this brilliant moment to Brazilian fans who I think are not fans of Eeyore, very few people are, frankly, then you'll feel okay.
Jeez.
You feel okay. Look, and then, look, he leans into it. I say this not to insult Eeyore. He's leaning into it. He said his favorite Aldo moment was when Conor McGregor knocked him out in 13 seconds. He knows what he's doing. He knows where he is. So, hey, maybe he plays the spoiler again. But either way, I'll say if you're planning to buy, there's a lot of reasons not to feel bad about it. But again, if you're on the fence, yeah, maybe pass on this one. We've got a lot of big cards coming up.
I love that vengeance is like one of your key selling points for
Yes.
this card. Just like get a little retribution in your life. Mike, let's start with this main event because I mean, us here at MMA Fighting, we have talked about this main event quite a bit. You have the curious case of Steve Vincenzo Erceg. We on the team have embraced young Vincenzo, Vinnie Sigs, as we like to call him, someone who has only been in the UFC for 10 to 11 months, I think, at this point. Yet it is very clear, very obvious how he ended up in this spot, right? He is the best that they had. He's the cheapest, the most available option to fill the slot on the calendar that they needed to fill. And frankly, he's looked pretty good so far. I would say 3-0 so far in his fights, and it's clear that he is not some bum. It's clear that he's someone who belongs in sort of this title picture at flyweight. So I ask you, Mike, which does this scenario remind you of more? Is this more of a John Moraga, a guy who came into the UFC in this weight class, won a couple fights, kind of got a title shot because there wasn't really anybody else, and then stayed around for a bit, but wasn't really ever that elite guy, that elite contender until he eventually just kind of washed out? Or is this a Kyoji Horiguchi, a guy who came in here, got a title shot very quickly? It was clearly too soon, but he ended up sticking around, just being an elite fighter in the space for the next decade. Which of those two is more likely to you?
That is a great question. So I think I'm gonna lean more towards Kyoji because I think there's a lot of talent with Steve Erceg. I mean, you don't come in short notice in your UFC debut and just beat a David Dvorak. Like, it's very hard to look even decent against David Dvorak, let alone beat that man. And he went out there and beat him, like very clearly beat him. And then he's gone out and got 2 big finishes, knocked out Matt Schnell in impressive fashion, got to show a little bit more of those striking chops in that fight, which I know a lot of people have knocked out Matt Schnell. And that's sort of why a lot of people feel like, well, he should have given it to Makayev, should have given it to this guy, he should have given it to this guy. He might be in his own territory, Shaheen, because nobody saw this coming. And the amount of, I don't even know what the right word is, but the amount of intrigue behind this kid, especially like this entire week, it seems like it's like Vinny, like I put on Instagram earlier, like it's Vinnie Sigs fight week, y'all. And I feel like the MMA community, even if they're like trashing this card, they're like buying into the Vinnie Sigs fight week. He's growing on people. And he says nothing. Like, he literally says nothing. He is the complete opposite of like any UFC champion there will ever be. Like, I know Alexandre Pantoja is not like a big trash talk or anything, but at least he pours his heart out in different ways. He gets very emotional. Like, you heard his post-fight interview after winning the title. If Steve Erceg wins the freaking flyweight title, he's going to show up to the post-fight press conference in a literally a brandless golf polo and a pair of jeans and probably sneakers he's had for 3 years. That's who this guy is. There's no trash talk. There's not a bad bone about him. He seems like kind of nervous, but still quirky in some kind of way. And the meme community, the social media era that we're in, has almost boosted Steve Erceg to this different level where they're comparing him to Steve Carell, Michael Scott from The Office, all these different things. So I think just because of the timing and because, honestly, of how lackluster this card is in terms of stakes and meaning and star power, I think almost like the MMA fan base has tried to make Steve Erceg a bigger star than he actually is. And I think if he goes out there and he beats Alexandre Pantoja, I mean, it's just going to be insane. It's going to be super weird. But it's going to be kind of refreshing at the same time, too. Like, could Steve Erceg just make a little bit of a splash in this wild world of mixed martial arts with his just good and vibey nature that he brings to the table? Like, it's been very strange. So he might actually be in his own category, Shaheen. But if I have to compare one to the other, I think it's more Kyoji because I think he does have a bit more staying power. And I do feel like he's playing with house money here. If he goes out there and loses to Alexandre Pantoja, most people feel like that's going to happen anyways. But if he goes out there and beats Pantoja, I mean, he's going to get over like Rover.
I love the way that you laid that out because I think you're 100% right. And this is very much a case of if you're not going to give us anything fun, like this weird community of ours is going to make our own fun. Like we're going to just will something into existence out of nothing, and it's kind of happened. Like you could see it just throughout the week, the momentum that the Vinnie Sigs train has sort of started to gather. It's very curious. It's very strange. It is somewhat of like a we're just making the best of a bad situation. We're having some fun with it. It feels like there's a lot of tongue in people's cheeks right now, but like you said, there's an opportunity here. I don't know, man. It really feels as if there's an opportunity here for him to capitalize on it. AK, I want to throw the same question to you because to me, like, this is the biggest question of the whole card. This is the biggest intrigue of the whole card is like, how is this story going to end? How is this weird chapter of flyweight history going to end? I throw the same question to you. Is this more John Moraga to you? Is this more Kyoji Horiguchi? Like, what do you make of the curious case of Vincenzo Erceg?
I'm actually getting a little bit of a Tim Elliott vibe. Now, Tim Elliott got his title fight with Demetrius under very different circumstances. He'd had a run with the UFC before, then was released, and then did the Ultimate Fighter, and then came back and got to fight Demetrius in a very thrilling, at least the first round, where it looked like he really had a chance to upset the great DJ, and it didn't happen. I compare him to Steve Erceg. Also because I feel like their temperament is somewhat similar. Maybe Elliott's a little bit more of an out there personality, but I do feel like he's relatable. He's likable. He's a tough. I think every time we talk about Tim Elliott, no matter who he's booked against, whether it's an undefeated guy or another contender, we always say Tim Elliott's a tough out. This guy's a tough out. He's very talented, very experienced. I think that's how we'll be referring to Steve Erceg in a couple of years, assuming he doesn't win the title on Saturday. I think we'll be talking about him the same way. He's always going to be in the mix. He'll always be not far from the top 15. If he falls out with a couple of losses, it could happen. It's a very difficult division, but not far off from again picking up 2 wins and then being back in the talk. So I think not quite John Moraga. I wouldn't put him on the level of Horiguchi either. But I think he's so well rounded. I think the way he's conducting himself is perfect. He's not tried to make himself something he's not. He can't do that. It's not in his nature. He's this very affable, soft-spoken Australian man, and just getting an opportunity that no one would have expected after like his second fight. You know, even after I think after the Schnell fight, we all kind of thought there's a chance he could sneak in there given the timing. But if you had said he was going to get a title shot after he won a somewhat forgettable decision over Alessandro Costa, people would have said, "What the hell are you talking about?" Steve Erceg, like he's 20-25, maybe he gets a 5-6 fight win streak, he gets in there if other people drop out. Well, he didn't get the streak, but other people are unavailable or already have a history with Pantoja. So here he is. So Tim Elliott's really more my comparison, where I think no matter what happens, Steve Erceg's here to stay. He's a good age for flyweight. He's only 28 years old.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's the thing we keep coming back to is like this is a very real talent. This is a very real opportunity. Like who is he going to be able to capitalize, I should say. Let's talk about the other side of this, though, because we haven't really even mentioned the actual headliner, right? Like the actual champion, Alexandre Pantoja. Mike, I mean, this is a very fun champion. I mean, every time we see Pantoja, for the most part, he's ending up on Fight of the Year lists. Maybe the last one wasn't that same case, but for the most part, like this dude is just really fun. He, like you said, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He has a very crazy story. He waited a long time for this opportunity to become the champion. He almost felt like the champion in waiting for throughout that whole Moreno Divas and Figueiredo saga. And he finally gets it. And now he gets this homecoming. He gets this opportunity. Jose Aldo's on the card. So it's a very Brazilian oriented, right? It's in Rio de Janeiro. Do you think there is a chance that there is an opportunity here for Pantoja to get his Jose Aldo moment, his crazy all-time highlight, running into the crowd, just causing chaos type of emotional moment? Or is this just not even a card that's built for that type of setup?
I just don't think it's possible with Jose on the card. If Jose wins, he's going to have that moment. And then the people will be like, I don't care what happens in the main event because the King of Rio just won in Rio in probably his final UFC fight. Like this is Jose Aldo's card and Pantoja's just the last fight of it. That's just what it's become. Like, look at all the headlines across the space right now. It's all about Jose Aldo. He's the name. He's the intrigue. I assume on social media, when we look at the individual weigh-ins outside of the weird William Gomi one, Jose Aldo is going to be the most viewed one because he's Jose freaking Aldo. And if Jose Aldo loses, like, people are going to be pissed. Like, they're going to be so mad heading into that main event. So maybe if Pantoja just gets a highlight reel, a Masvidal Askren moment, maybe that changes them a little bit. But I mean, it's kind of hard to play second fiddle to Jose Aldo, even if you are in the main event. So I don't think really any of that matters. But at the same token, from a stylistic perspective, if Alexandre Pantoja is going to go out there and style on somebody and get a big finish, especially on the ground, it's this fight. I know there's a lot of questions about Steve Erceg and his ground game. I think as an offensive wrestler, he's very, very solid. I think he's super underrated heading into this fight. I think he's got very good takedown defense, but my biggest concern about him is what happens when he does end up on his back. Can Steve pop back up? Can he do that over and over again? Or is this one of those situations where if Pantoja gets him down, the fight is over immediately after, or just the round is ostensibly over because Erceg's just not going to be able to get off of his back. Now, when the striking exchanges happen, that's when things are going to get really interesting because Erceg's got that pop, and he's probably the better boxer than Pantoja. But make no mistake about it, Alexandre Pantoja, while he might be sort of the underdog in a Muay Thai fight, dude is a dog. He is durable as hell, and no one's been able to get this guy out of there. And I do feel like if Vinnie Sigs is going to win this fight, it's going to be him knocking out Pantoja, and that's going to let these Brazilian fans down in a big way, unless Jose Aldo goes out there and does work against Jonathan Martinez. So, yeah, I think this is a great matchup for him to shine and send the fans home a little bit happier, especially if Jose wins. But ultimately, like, will this make or break their night? I kind of don't think it's gonna, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, the setup is there, right? Because when you look at the last time the UFC took a pay-per-view to Rio, it was 283. Last two fights did not endear themselves to the Brazilian crowd. And plus, you want to throw in the Shogun thing, too. Like, it was a bit of a rough night for the local crowd. This time, it feels like the potential is there for maybe an opposite situation. The Jose fight is a little, I think, rougher than the main event, but still, either one is a toss-up, so you never know. But AK, I'll throw it to you, and then we'll make the picks. But I just always really enjoy this question because ultimately, why do we watch this? We watch this sport because it's fun. We watch this sport because it is unpredictable, and there are so many interesting outcomes that could happen from any fight. And in this fight in particular, this main event, it feels as if this will be a fun fight, and it feels as if there is a multitude of interesting outcomes that could arise from it, right? We just said from Mike, Pantoja could have his Jose Aldo moment. Or you have, the curious case of Steve Erceg, who could really become something. I don't know what in particular, but he could become something unique and special in his own way if he's able to pull off just a really crazy upset here. So I throw it to you. What's the most fun? What's the most interesting outcome? Paint the picture for me from UFC 301's main event.
Oh, the most fun outcome is Pantoja dragging Erceg into another like fight of the year contender, like he did with Moreno. God, I love that fight so much. Controversial decision, but amazing fight. I loved just thinking about the Moreno Pantoja fight was so fun. Because Mike made a good point about Erceg's boxing. I think like in a straight boxing match, he would have an advantage, but this is MMA. How rarely does someone get drawn to a straight boxing match? And Pantoja just finds a way, I think, to take people out of their comfort zone. And I'm not saying Steve Erceg can't deal with that. If anything, I think he's actually shown he's pretty adaptable. But man, when you go to war with Pantoja, when you have him just like in your face, just slugging away at you and daring you to do the same and daring you to just throw technique out the window, that to me is the most fun. And then in that case, I think no matter who won the decision, in that case, it's a good time. But Erceg, like eking it out in Brazil. I know I keep talking about how like I want this to be like a happier night for the fans than the last visit to Rio was, but I think for those of us watching home, for people who aren't necessarily invested in a Brazilian champion retaining or not, this underdog story would be compelling. And again, he's a likable guy. Everything about Erceg screams underdog. We talked about him dressing like a tourist. We talked about him getting this title fight after a relatively inauspicious 3-0 start, besides the Chanel knockout. Even he came in on short notice for his UFC debut. Like, I mean, he's not like some huge prospect that they brought in with the expectation that he would be a major player in the division someday. And then for him to become a champion less than a year later, it'd be so cool. And so much, again, of what we enjoy about this business. We enjoy the chaos. And that's not saying anything bad about Pantoja. Like, I would love to see Pantoja retain too. I think he's underappreciated. He's number 6 in our pound for pound rankings. I know a lot of people think that's too high, but when you look at his past 5 wins, they stack up against probably almost anyone else on our pound for pound chart. And he has some great past wins too over title contenders. And so that's a great story as well. Even Pantoja just retaining in his hometown. But I'm hoping not for a shock finish for Steve Erceg, not for a dominant victory for the champion. I want that back and forth battle. I want the hugging. I want the tears at the end. I want the fans cheering both men. And I want us leaving 301 with that feeling of I want Dana White to have that feeling and to be able to tell us, see, I told you, you all hated this card, and then release another video saying how dumb we were for criticizing it. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, I see. You're just trying to up your appearances on these UFC hit videos. I see where you're going.
I wasn't in the last one.
You're right. That's what I'm saying. You're 1 for 2 now. We need to get you 2
I
for
want
3.
back in. This card's terrible. I want back in.
Just go ahead and clip that right there, UFC.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's jump to the picks. We can get to other stuff with this card. I'll start with you, AK. Is this another Pantoja title defense, or is this the start of the Vinnie Sigs Fighter of the Year campaign?
When this fight was, not when it was first booked, probably a couple weeks after, when I started thinking more about Erceg and maybe reviewing some of his footage, I really, really was getting on the, this all has all the makings of upset. Again, Steve Erceg, really well-rounded. He has finishing ability. I think he's actually going to be able to hang with Pantoja on the ground a bit, especially if Pantoja is more interested in just kind of taking this on the feet and brawling. So I really wanted to lean towards an Erceg upset, but I think I got caught up in the narrative a little bit. Again, to go back, watch some Pantoja footage, and just talk about how skilled this guy is, beyond his toughness, beyond having a great chin, beyond that indomitable spirit that he has inside of him. He is also just technically a great all-around fighter. Again, I said one of the top 10 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. I stand by that. I think if people it's fine if they disagree, but I think to say he's not in the conversation is crazy. Erceg could totally upset the apple cart. I don't know what our pound-for-pound rankings will look like if Erceg wins. I don't know if we launch him right into the top 10 and we drop a bunch of people down. I shouldn't even say it because it's just going to give us a headache come Monday morning. But I am leaning towards Pantoja win. Kind of the scenario I lined out. Maybe not a fight of the year candidate, but I think it's going to be an entertaining back and forth battle. And I think Pantoja, I like his ability to put on pressure a little more. I think his volume is going to be, I think he'll be able to produce greater volume than Erceg will be looking for. I think Erceg is going to try to be a little bit tighter, a little bit more technical. And I think in this situation, maybe even with the crowd's reaction influencing the judges a little bit, they're only human. I'm not saying it's the worst thing. It happens. I think Pantoja wins a not controversial, but close unanimous decision.
What about you, Mike?
Everything on paper tells me Alexandre Pantoja is going to have his hand raised at the end of the night. But sometimes what it looks like on paper, you have to check in with the vibes. And you have to see what the vibes are telling you. And then you have to weigh it out and just kind of see where you're going. And plus, at this point, how could I not bet on Vinnie Sigs to get it done? After everything that has happened here, I just feel like the vibes are there. And just think of the timing, right? Where's the UFC going in August? They're going to Perth. Where does Steve Erceg live? Lives in Perth. That's where he trains. That's where he's from. How do we build this guy to be whatever kind of a star he's going to be? Like his own sort of category, his own tier. He's got to win. He's got to go out there and go into enemy territory. And even the pissed off Brazilians, when Steve Erceg gets on the mic and says very little, but still it's still somehow going to be very funny to listen to, even though he's not trying to be funny. It's just going to be great. And even the Brazilian fans are going to be like, you know what? We kind of like this guy. When you mentioned the Steve Erceg campaign for Fighter of the Year, I had to think about it because even if he goes out there and pulls off this upset, he's probably still third on the list behind Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, even with 2 wins and a huge upset in a title fight. But it certainly puts him in a great spot and a much better position than we thought. But this is one of those fights where if it ends early, it's probably going to be Vinnie Sigs ending it. But again, as I mentioned, the durability to finish a guy like Pantoja, it's almost impossible to finish this dude. But maybe the wars have caught up to him. Maybe the Moreno fight took a little piece of him, and then the Royval fight took a little tiny bit more, even though it wasn't as crazy and wild as that fight. And maybe it just lines up beautifully for young Vinnie Sigs on Saturday night to become the champion of the world. And that's what I'm predicting. Vinnie Sigs becomes the first person to knock out Alexandre Pantoja. He does it 3 minutes into round 2. Pantoja's looking incredible. Maybe a 10-8 first round. And then Pantoja shoots a takedown. He just misses. He can't get it. And then he tries to shoot again. But just as he tries to shoot, a little Vinnie Sigs uppercut. Bam! New champion. I'm not confident in this pick at all, but that's where the bet's going for the watch party. Vinnie Sigs, new champ. Let's go.
Mike Heck riding the vibes all the way to the finish line. I love to see it. See, you're you're a man of your word. You're carrying all the way through. You got to respect
Yep.
it. As much as I would love to ride the vibes, I mean, ultimately, I have been calling Pantoja a champion and waiting in this division for years at this point. I thought this guy was going to win the title long before he did. He just feels like the best flyweight in the world. And it's weird because it's always ugly, right? Like it always is messy. A lot of times it doesn't look convincing, but then he finds this second and third and fourth win and he just manages to gut it out and get what he needs to get out of himself to make it happen. This to me feels very reminiscent of some of those DJ fights where DJ, again, like a John Moraga or a Kyoji Horiguchi, just someone, he's getting them too soon. And I think ultimately he's just going to overwhelm Vinnie Sigs. As much as the story would be cool, I see this being a Pantoja title defense. Third round, I'd say submission, and he gets him out of there. And then maybe we don't have the Jose Aldo Rio moment, but he does have some sort of moment, jumps into the crowd, and it just ends up being a happy day for the Brazilian audience. But I digress. Let us now move on. Let us move to the co-main event. And I think really, Mike, you said it best. The biggest conversation piece around this whole entire card is Jose Aldo because he is freaking Jose Aldo. He is a legend. He is one of the greatest fighters we have ever seen in the history of this sport. He is a UFC Hall of Famer already. He is someone we did not expect to see compete in the octagon again. And yet here he is. He's fighting Jonathan Martinez. The King of Rio returns to Rio. So, Mike, I start with you. Do you think Jose Aldo wanted to do this? And by that, I mean, do you think that this was his first choice? Like, he clearly wants to compete in some fashion. But now we're finding out this week he had an offer to box on the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson show. Giant stadium show in Dallas, monster event, Netflix. Everyone's going to be watching whether they like it or not. And instead, now he's fighting Jonathan Martinez at UFC 301. Do you think that this is where he wanted things to end?
I guess it's tough to end. See, when you look back at what Jose Aldo has done over the last few years, like those last few years at bantamweight, climbing back up the ladder after the tough loss to Petr Yan, and then the UFC egregiously matchmaking him against Merab Dvalishvili in Salt Lake freaking City in elevation when he should have been fighting for the freaking belt to begin with. I think this is the UFC. I think this is Jose Aldo wanting to get out, and I think the UFC is maybe trying to do him kind of a solid, at least the way they feel. You get to do it in Rio. You get to have your last hurrah. You get to do it against a guy that not a lot of people know is pretty good, but actually stylistically, as long as you're not completely over the hill in fight years, you probably should win this fight because you've done it to the similar styles over the years. And then you could go off and be free as a bird. You could be a free agent, even if they are. Who knows? Maybe the UFC offers up a cajillion dollars at a Sean O'Malley title fight. You don't think Sean O'Malley would be interested in fighting Jose Aldo over Merab Dvalishvili? I think you could see the dollar signs there. But yeah, I think this is kind of a win-win for both sides because, geez, Louise Shaheen, if Jose Aldo was not on this card, what are we even talking about here?
It's tough.
It's tough. The whole world is hoping Vinnie Sigs wins this fight just so we have something to talk about. So Jose Aldo helps the UFC. UFC helping out Jose Aldo by giving him the big fight in Rio, and then he gets to exercise the contract and then go out, and he could still box on the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson Carter for BKFC, or maybe PFL offers him a whole bunch of money to do the pay-per-view super fights. Like, this is so interesting because once he becomes a free agent, what's he going to do? I'm super curious to find out. So, yeah, I think this is better than losing to Merab in Salt Lake City in a fight that no one's really going to remember, honestly. So, yeah, I don't think it's too bad, honestly.
That's fair. That's fair. When this was announced, it was weird to me initially. Just because I think the matchup, right, like Jonathan Martinez does not scream, oh, this is a big Jose Aldo blowout fight. But also, like, we find out, like, it was supposed to be Dominic Cruz, which that would have made a lot more sense to me. Like, but I understand again why Jose maybe that just didn't come together. It does feel to me like there, and this is coming from a guy who I love, Jose Aldo. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. It does feel like there's an element of him just going through the motions with this, of just like, okay, like this is what you guys need me to do. Like, I'll go ahead and do it just so I'm able to be free of this contract and maybe be able to pursue better options. But I don't know, man. I can't lie and say that it doesn't warm my heart and excite me again to see the prospect of Jose Aldo fighting in Rio. And even if this isn't Dominic Cruz, like Jonathan Martinez is going to be a hell of a fight, right? Like, this is a very exciting matchup. It's meaningful to some degree. within the stages of this division. And it is interesting just to hear Jose speaking himself of like, hey, I want to see where I'm at. I want to see if I'm still that guy. That's an interesting narrative for me as a Jose Aldo fan to sort of hear from him, because we haven't heard that type of self-awareness and self-reflection from him really that often. He's usually very stoic in that regard. AK, I wonder for you, do you think with 100% certainty, that this is the last time we see Jose Aldo in the UFC competing, and B, that this is the last time we see him in MMA competing altogether?
Wow. I mean, I would have thought last time. I believe the first retirement. I know I shouldn't have. I think even after the loss to Merab, I think his contract situation, people were aware of it. Obviously, because when he went to go box, there was a lot of the interviews he said like, "Oh yeah, like the UFC is letting me go, to box." So we knew it wasn't over. We knew technically, legally, it wasn't over. The UFC still had him under control, as it were. But part of me had hoped that he could just go live his dream and box, and then that would be it. So maybe I'm naive. But I am happy that he's back. I choose to believe again. You know what? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. If I'm wrong again, and Jose Aldo comes back to the UFC or comes back to MMA, then hey, I'm a sucker. But I'm happy to see him back. I am looking at this as our chance to give him a proper goodbye. Even if he loses, I think it'll be in a more entertaining fashion than the Merab fight. That Merab fight, we knew it was a bad match for Jose. The timing was terrible because we all thought, why didn't Jose Aldo just get a title shot instead of TJ Dillashaw? Now there isn't that like question of, well, what else could they have done with it other than the Dominic Cruz fight, which we know just they tried and just it didn't come together. So yes, maybe I'm trying to speak into existence, much like Mike is with Steve Erceg uppercutting Pantoja's head off. But I want to believe this is the end. I want to believe win or lose, we get one last moment with the King of Rio in Rio, and we get to say goodbye. We so rarely get to say goodbye in this business because we don't know, like we said, we don't know if someone's gone for good. But there's some finality here. We know it's the last fight in his contract. Based on the matchup he was given, we don't get the sense that they did it to, like, put him into position to get a title shot next, or again, or to even just become a contender again, right? They don't know. It's like we say, it could be good for Jonathan Martinez just to have that name in his resume. But overall, it feels like there's no really strong storyline in the matchup itself. So I want to believe, I'm choosing to believe, this is the last time we will see Jose Aldo fight in MMA, and we can just guiltlessly enjoy his boxing career or whatever he decides to do next.
So I hate to do this to you then, and I hate that these words are even going to come out of my mouth considering everything that you just said, because I think you're probably right. But again, the Jose Aldo fan in me, the wistful, nostalgic man who was around for the WEC, who wrote a very long piece about people fighting Jose Aldo, who just has followed this career so closely, who has, I think, a portrait of Jose Aldo right behind him. I can't help but wonder. And so I'm just going to ask this, and I hate that I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to ask this to you, AK. Is there a world at all, even a 1% chance, where Jose Aldo comes out here and Cub Swanson's this man, double flying knee knockout in 8 seconds, jumps into the crowd in Rio, celebrates like he just won the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden we are talking about Jose Aldo in a UFC title shot?
Yeah, better than 1%.
At all. Any chance?
Yeah. Better than 1%. We're getting a Steve Erceg title shot on Saturday. That was hovering around probably like a 10% chance after the Matt Schnell fight, and it happened. So for sure. Is that what Jose is thinking going to this fight? Is that what his team is thinking? I highly doubt it. Is that a conversation he's had with the UFC? I highly doubt it. But things in this business change so quickly. And if there's a demand for it, and if Sean O'Malley's out there, he has a tweet ready, man. He has a tweet ready. Whether he's serious or trolling, he has a tweet ready for a Jose Aldo win, saying like, "Ooh, man, it'd be great to add this name to our resume." Or I don't know. I'm not cool. I'm not hip and cool like these young streamer cats. I don't know how he'd use some no cap or something. I'd love to fight Jose Aldo. I don't know what the language the kids are using these days. But it's better than 1%.
Nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. I try. It's better than 1%. You're not dreaming. I don't think you're the only one talking about that possibility this week. Once Jose Aldo steps into that cage, again, it should be the end. because we know he's fulfilling the last bet on a contract, but really it could be the beginning of yet another bizarre, crazy storyline that none of us could have ever predicted. And who knows, maybe another strange chapter in one of the greatest careers ever. But that would be an interesting way to end it, is finding him somehow one more title shot.
If only. If only. I don't think that at all is going to happen. I think there is a 1% if that chance of that happening, but that would be a wonderful outcome. Mike, I want to throw it to you. I mean, Jonathan Martinez in some respect is one of your guys, I would say, right? Like the silence behind the violence is a top tier A+ MMA nickname that you have given this man, and I think it fits to a T. He's thrust into a very difficult spot right now, I would say. This is someone who is low-key, like just been putting on bangers for this division, who's 6 in a row. Leg kick finishes, like the leg kick battle that this could have been 10 years ago would have been astounding. I don't think that's what this is now, because that's just not who Jose is now. But, you know, you can always hope. But just, it's weird because, again, he's going into Rio, right? Going against a guy who's already in the Hall of Fame, a guy who's retired. And we have seen this in the past, people in the Jonathan Martinez role, right? Like it sometimes doesn't really do much for them. I think back to Frankie Edgar, his last fight against Chris Gutierrez, Shogun, the Ihor Poteria thing. It's not as if we are talking about Gutierrez or Poteria like headlining shows and being these stars. And actually, as AK demonstrated, I think for Poteria, it was actually a negative. It did more damage than good for him to be in that position. How much do you think there is to be gained here in a situation like this for Jonathan Martinez?
Like nothing. And it's crazy to say that fighting
nothing.
Jose Aldo. I mean, it's a great name on the resume, but look at this division right now. Look what's going on. Sean O'Malley and Merab. We got Corey Sandhagen. We got Umar coming up. We have Piotr Jan. We have Figgy Smalls. We have all these guys who are household names and are over and are in line and are in the conversation to fight for the title. Jonathan Martinez beating a guy who no one thought would ever fight in the UFC again, doing it on short notice, and then basically like once he beats Jose Aldo, like Jose Aldo's gone. And it's not like he's retiring. Like with Frankie Edgar and Shogun, we knew, all right, at this point, these two guys should just not be allowed to fight anybody ever again. We don't feel that way about Jose Aldo. Like even the Merab fight, Jed Meshew still says on shows all the time that Jose Aldo won that fight. He still believes in his heart of hearts that Jose Aldo beat Merab Dvalishvili.
To be fair, I kind of believe that too. I kind of believe that too, but I'm not going to like go to war over it.
What? Yeah. He defended all of Merab Dvalishvili's takedowns. 0 for 14. Merab was not good. Like he shut Merab down in a certain way and then did it in a place where that fight should have never happened to begin with. So I just don't think Jonathan gains a whole lot here other than, hey, one time I beat the greatest featherweight of all time in a bantamweight fight in Rio. It'd be really cool. But if Jonathan Martinez wins, where is he going to go? Is he going to go on the microphone and just spit venom? No, he's not going to say anything. At his media day, he was asked 19 questions and he answered them all in 3 minutes. It's just not who he is. He doesn't check off that particular box. And that's why he is the silence behind the violence. But if he beats Jose Aldo, it's great. He's probably going to fight Kyler Phillips next. Maybe he fights Rob Font, which I like Rob, and it's a good fight, but he gains something. It's like he beats anybody else really in this division. And again, he's just kind of in a no-win situation. If he goes out and beats Jose Aldo, Rio's going to hate him. He gets something. He gets the name. But look what happened with Chris Gutierrez to beat Frankie Edgar. And he did it in emphatic fashion. They threw him in there with Pedro Munoz, and he hasn't won a fight since. So I don't think he gains a whole hell of a lot from this. If this is a year ago, maybe he gains a little bit more. But right now, I don't think he gains a whole hell of a lot. And it's so weird for me to say, but there's just not a lot on the line here. Like all the intrigue and all the stakes are on the Jose Aldo side because it's the final fight in his deal and he's about to become a free agent. So yeah, it's weird.
I think weird's the right word, but actually I think you're probably right, man. Like we've consistently seen this. That's why I hate these. I don't hate this matchup because again, it just seems fun. And I don't think Jose's that washed guy that we were talking about, like a Tony Ferguson or whatever, but like, it's tough. It's tough because we've seen time and time again that the other guy, the young up and coming guy, does not seem to benefit from these type of fights, and that's why I hate these type of fights. I would have loved the Dominic Cruz matchup. I would have loved. I know that couldn't have happened, but I would have loved a fight like that. I like the old guy matchups because it feels better. It feels like we get more out of it, because like that's not someone who needs the rub. That's just more of an intrigue rather than like this weird setup that we constantly get of the young eating the old. But I digress. This is what we got. And so let's go to the picks. Mike, I'll start with you.
Well, as you know, watch party comes along. We got to make some bets. There is no effing way that I'm betting against Jose Aldo when he's at plus money. And that's what I'm doing here. There's a lot of people that I've talked to, a lot of people that I respect, who feel like Jonathan Martinez is just going to whoop Jose Aldo's ass tomorrow night. And I'm curious, like, where that's coming from. I just don't know if I feel like Jose has had this fight a million times. And he just had one like a few years ago with Pedro Munoz, a guy who's really good at leg kicking that isn't going to really try to take him down all that much. And Jose put on just a clinic in that fight against Pedro Munoz, who has incredible experience and has been in that octagon with tons of guys, more so than Jonathan Martinez. Unless Jose Aldo is just cooked, I just don't see how he loses this fight. And I'm not saying that Jonathan Martinez is a bad fighter. This is Jose freaking Aldo, the King of Rio, fighting in his backyard in just a big spot for him. So unless Jose is just done and is just not a shell of himself, which I don't think that's the case, I think Jose Aldo wins the decision. I do think it's a fun fight. I think Jonathan has his moments, but I think the first time Martinez throws a leg kick and Jose Aldo easily checks it and sees it coming from a mile away, he's going to know he's in trouble. And I don't know if there's going to be like a huge plan B. So I am intrigued. Obviously, the storylines are with Aldo, but I'm intrigued with this fight to see the game plan of Jonathan Martinez. Like, what is he going to do to beat Jose Aldo? I can't wait to find out, but you give me Jose Aldo plus money, I'm taking it. Aldo by decision's the pick.
What about you, AK? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I don't want to pick against Aldo. It's not a fun thing to do. And I think very highly of Jonathan Martinez. I think he's looked great. I think he's fought a very good competition. Bantamweight is extremely tough. We keep talking about that. Aldo is coming off a bit of a layoff. I mean, technically the longest layoff of his career, if you want to refer to it as just a layoff and not like what we thought it was, a retirement. I mean, you can't pick against Aldo in like almost any striking battle. Not that he hasn't been outstruck. I mean, we can go look at like Alexander Volkanovski. But am I comparing Martinez to Volkanovski in that case? And I don't know if we can go that far. Maybe Martinez is a future champion. I don't know. I'm kind of with, just to pick up on sort of one of the previous questions, I'm kind of with what Mike said, where no matter what happens, his next matchup is probably going to be with whoever he was going to fight anyway if he wasn't called on to this Aldo fight. Like I can probably go back to our last on to the next one pick, the last time Jonathan Martinez won, and just go with that for my pick for Sunday. Right. I think it's a cool fight, though. I do think it's always great to have these things, these names on your resume. I'm one of the people who made Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson happen, and I still stand by. When people look at your Wikipedia entry,
we'll never forgive you for that.
I had to do it. I still think somewhere down the road,
you didn't.
Look at your,
you super didn't.
It had to be done. When people look at your resume and they see, oh wow, this guy beat Tony Ferguson, like they're not always going to remember the context. They're not always going to remember the state that fighter was in, and it'll be that way with Jonathan Martinez and Jose Aldo too. They'll know he didn't beat him in his prime, but for Jonathan Martinez, you'll always be able to say, hey, I beat Jose Aldo, if he pulls it off. So that said, I am leaning towards Aldo. I don't think he's close to washed. I know that's a bold thing to say given how he's 37 now. In fight years, he's even older. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been fighting since he was a young man. But his game has aged very well, and I think most people would agree it has aged very well. I'm sure there's fights that we can say he's lost because of sheer athleticism difference. Even the Merab fight, like if you scored that from Merab, it was really just because Merab's relentless cardio and just bullied him. And if you thought he did enough, that's why. I don't think that'll happen necessarily with John Martinez. I don't see Martinez as being the type to overwhelm him. And I think, again, if this stays in the feature, which it should, Aldo just has a good chance to win that fight like 75% of the time. I just think he's one of the all-time greats, and I don't think he's done. I think he's only done really because he wants to be done. he has nothing to lose here. He has nothing to lose. We talked about, is there a chance he gets a title shot? I'll tell you, that's not on his mind. He's coming back to fulfill a contract, and while that might seem a bit mercenary, and you might hold that against him, I don't think that is in this case. I think he's going to be so free in there that you're going to see a lot of flashes of the old Aldo, and I think he's going to not cruise, but I think he's going to win a decision that's going to make us all very, very happy, and it might be one of the moments we're talking about at the end of the year.
I like it. So 2 for 2 for Aldo, and there's no drama here for me. I'm making it 3 for 3. I can't pick against that man. And you know what? I think we're gonna get a Robbie Lawler greatest retirement of all time type of moment. No, I don't. I'm just saying that. I don't actually believe that, but I do think it will be. I mean, I don't think Jose Aldo is that guy yet. I don't think he's cooked, as you said, Mike. I don't think that he is that far past it. The Merab fight was incredibly competitive, and that wasn't very long ago. The only thing that worries me, I guess, the most is the timeline of all of this, because it does feel as if Jose had put MMA behind him. He wasn't focusing on this. He was training for a boxing fight, and then this sort of circumstance came up where I don't know exactly what happened, but it does feel as if he wanted to fight on that boxing card in Dallas, kind of wasn't able to, and then said, okay, I'll just do this instead so I can become free and then do whatever I want, and pivoted very quickly to training for MMA. It doesn't feel like he was training for MMA very long. This was all a short turnaround. So that does worry me, just a Jose Aldo with very limited time to prepare at the age that he's at. But ultimately, man, I mean, you give me Jose Aldo in Rio, you give me Jose Aldo at plus money, you give me Jose Aldo even at this stage of his career in a striking battle, like you said, aka a leg kick battle potentially. I got to take Jose Aldo. I got to take Scarface. I got to take the greatest featherweight of all time. I got to take one of the pioneers of this entire damn division, the man who built this division from the ground up. So that's where I'm at too. Let's move on very quickly. Let's hit the rest of this card. Michael, throw it right to you. What else is catching your eye? What else do you like on this card? If you could pick one fight that you could watch outside of these top two, what are you going with?
The best fight on the entire card. Lightweight, Shaheen. Lightweights. And you got two 26-year-olds vying for their place to probably enter the top 20 in this division. This is the easiest pick. This is the easiest question you could have asked me. Miktabek Oralbai, who looks just like an absolute savage, could be that dude, taking on a guy who I think got absolutely screwed not being in the top 5 of our Rookie of the Year conversation last year, and Elvis Brenner. These two guys are just on a roll right now. They are finishing machines. Oralbai is just a grappling threat, but he hits like an absolute truck. And Elvis Brenner is a guy that just won't go away. Just ask Guram Kutateladze, who kind of beat the hell out of him for 9 minutes. And Elvis Brenner just survived, weathered, and then got a big finish in round 3. This dude's been impressing everybody. And Oralbai is just a scary looking cat who wears a hat. And it's a funny hat. It's a great hat.
Wow, that was a bar.
He's terrifying. He's just a terrifying individual. So I love this fight so much. It's the who is more for real fight on UFC 301, and it's in the best division in the sport. One of these guys is probably going to be a top 15 dude by the end of the year, and we're going to find out who that is on Saturday. I love this fight. I understand why it's not on the main card, but look, if you don't want to spend $80, don't worry about it. Don't you worry about it, because you can watch the best fight on the card on ESPN Plus. So you're welcome.
Hey man, no argument from here. We all know that wearing a scary looking hat is one of the best bases in MMA. That has been proven time and time again. I will not argue with you on that. AK, how about you? You're muted, AK.
Sorry. That's the right answer. Brenner, I was speechless. Brenner and Oralbai is a fantastic fight. I mean, that would be the co-main on a fight. That sounds like I'm damning with faint praise, but I mean that. Like, it could be, that's a future main event of a fight night. Let me put it that way. It's just they're just meeting a bit earlier in their UFC careers, right? This is a huge fight. It's gonna be really exciting. Both guys, I think, could be players in this division. I think the prelims are also on ESPN. So guess what, guys? Not only do you not need to buy a pay-per-view to see probably the best fight in the card, not only do you not need to have an ESPN Plus subscription, I think if you have ESPN as part of your US cable package, you just tune on to ESPN. Watch some Oralbai Brenner. So it's a great answer. As far as pay-per-view goes, though, ESPN 2. I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
you have 2 ESPNs down there?
This card didn't get big ESPN.
Man, you guys you got 2 ESPNs now? Man, what a world. What a world we live in.
Dude, we have like 6 ESPNs.
The Ocho? The Ocho?
We get the news. We get ESPN News, bro.
ESPN ESPN news. Anyway, but I also, if you are going to, like I said, if you are going for the pay-per-view, I kind of hyped this one up a bit earlier. I do love the Michel Pereira Pantoja matchup. I wish there was a little more heat. Like I said, Pantoja is kind of playing the heel. If you pay close enough attention to his interviews, Michel Pereira has said that he did mention the Shogun fight. He did mention that, like, but it feels like they're both kind of just almost feel like they're obligated to mention these things. I want to believe it is deeply personal, and I hope Michel Pereira understands how cathartic it will be if he does take out Pantoja, because that visitor again. Whatever happened with Glover, whatever happened with Figgy, the real blow that was struck was the last fight of Shogun's career, happening in Brazil, and a loss to Eeyore, and then Eeyore doing a little dance after, which people did not appreciate. That did not go over well with the live crowd, did not go over well on social media. Instant heel. And Michel Pereira, you can be a hero. All right, he said it himself. He's like, he obviously he wants to be a champion someday, but he's not in the business of calling people out. He's not in the business of picking matchups. He takes who they take. He takes who they give him, excuse me. And they have given him a golden opportunity here to I would say, maybe get the second biggest pop of the night behind a Jose Aldo win if he styles on Pantoja. Give us vintage Demolidor. Give us a bit of that show. I like boring, successful Michel Pereira, but give us a little taste of the crazy man. Give us. We saw the dance last time. It's there. It's still there. The dance intro was friggin' fantastic. It's still there. So put on a show, Michel Pereira. I think he can definitely steal it.
AK, what's your reaction if that happens and then he does the dance? He does the duelist dance.
If he does Eeyore's dance,
yes, just straight up steals it.
10 out of 10. Then you know what? Even Aldo's not beating that. 10 out of 10.
Like, is he ending? I feel like at that point, Pereira's ending up on your fight of the year list.
He's ending up in my top five middleweights. That's where he's going. He does that.
I respect it. I wouldn't argue against it. I respect it.
Yeah.
Both fine choices. I think for me, I look a little bit even deeper on the card. It is slim pickings. We got to be honest with ourselves here. It's pretty slim pickings. I just always like when Drakkar Klose fights. I feel like Drakkar Klose is one of these guys who just consistently comes out here and puts on extremely fun fights. And for the most part, kind of just wins all of them. And yet the fights are so far apart from each other. That he's out for so long. He's so unlucky with injuries and just all the stuff that happens to him. And like, he never can really quite get the big one right. Like the Beneil Dariush fight is bananas for 6 minutes straight. And then all of a sudden he loses with a crazy punch, things like that. I want Drakkar Klose to have his moment. I don't think this is the moment for him. He continues to fight these guys like a Joaquim Silva, like he is on Saturday. But just sign me up for any Drakkar Klose fight. This is someone who has been sort of on the precipice for this lightweight top 15 forever. I still don't think he is ranked, even though he's won 6 of his past 7. Maybe this is the one that gets him into the conversation to get ranked. I think for us, he was briefly ranked, but just sign me up for any Drakkar Klose fight. That man is low-key very exciting, very underrated. I think hopefully he can come to reach some sort of moment. Maybe this is the one that pushes him there. But sign me up for that Drakkar Klose Joaquim Silva fight. And dude, now
that guy's career has been so weird. Like it's
weird.
Him and Fluffy Hernandez are so similar where they get, they're out for a while, there's injuries, and then they come back and they get this like incredible performance and they gain a whole bunch of momentum. And then we don't see him for like 9 months. Like they get booked to fight and then it falls apart. And then we just get like a random matchup that we didn't really see coming. And expect these guys to fight higher ranked guys because, meritocratically they've earned it. But yeah, for some reason, like these guys,
he gets top 30 guys. He just gets top 30 guys
Wild.
Every time. Top 30 guy. That's it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It sucks. He's kind of like he's getting to the point where he's 36. Like I think it's probably not happening at this point, and that's just how some guys' careers go. But maybe hope springs eternal. Casey, get in here. What's up, Casey?
Hi.
Sleeves still fully on, Casey. It's that kind of a card for you, huh?
Yeah.
Let me
keep sleeves on card. Sleeves on.
Sorry, Casey. Let me end the poll here. Will you be paying money to watch UFC 301? We got a healthy amount of votes. 83% no. Pretty firm.
Jeez.
So that means they won't be watching.
That
might
be the biggest ever. That's got to be the biggest ever.
They won't be watching at all because I don't know any other way to watch a pay-per-view. So I don't know why. What a strange way for me to phrase that question.
Hey, by the way, a
Yes,
little bit
yes.
of a tease potentially. There's some potential weirdness going on in Brazil right now. That's all I'll say. I don't have. It's not fully full yet, but there could be some weirdness coming down the pipe within the next hour. So stay tuned.
What?
Stay tuned, gentlemen. Maybe things stay the same, but we might have some weirdness. But I'll let you know if it happens. If I confirm this, I will let you know.
That's very cryptic.
I just keep thinking how different we'll be talking about this card if this was just a fight night card.
Mhm.
Like the
it'd
tone
be
is
fine.
totally
It'd be great.
different. Yeah,
It's a really good.
but we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to change the tone because this is a pay per view. This is $80.
80 USD.
Yeah. Thank you, AK.
I'm Canadian. I'm
Yeah.
Canadian.
How much is it Canadian dollars? Like
That's
billion?
300. That's $250 Canadian.
$350. Yeah. So
Well, it doesn't help too, the rubber banding effect of it, right? Where just like 4 weeks ago, we spent that same $80 on an all timer, like just one of the greatest things we've ever seen, and then slingshots to this, where it's the exact same price tag for something that is just not even remotely close. Like obviously they can't all be 300, but that does not help it.
yeah, but they can be closer. They can be half at 300. I don't know. This is like
No,
yeah.
it can't. I mean, the thing is, like,
No, we talked about this last week. It was 300. Like, this doesn't have to be a once every decade thing for 300. They can do a 300 once a year, every year and a half. They can be at the Super Bowl event, but that's another issue. But that's another topic.
The thing is, there was alternative routes, right? Like Jalen Turner Moicano, if that ends up on this, that's certainly helpful, right? Like there were fights where you didn't need to make it so ridiculous, but I understand the the desire to make it as ridiculous because it was the greatest card of all time, and it played out in like a really
should
spectacular way.
Leon Blah been the main event of this?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
No,
When should it be the main event for?
I think realistically, Leon Bilal could have just been on 300 and like
Okay,
we
but it's
would
not
have just
300.
dealt with it, and then Pereira would be on this. And this card is so vastly different if Alex Pereira is on it.
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I think
But whatever.
yeah.
I mean, we got what we got.
If UFC,
We got.
if UFC 300 ended with Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje with 1 second left in that fight, that was the end of 300, and then we still had Pereira and Hill to look forward to on this card. Like,
totally
geez
fine.
Louise, man. Hell yeah.
It's totally fine.
It's fine.
But again, we understood the score before even like 4 weeks ago. Like we understood what we were setting ourselves up for. Like we had the peak, and now
we
getting
didn't
the valley.
set ourselves up.
Like,
The UFC set themselves up for this. The UFC set them. We didn't. Like this is something when the UFC signed that contract and like we have to have this many fights. Like this is the price we pay. But the UFC set us up for this.
But I'm okay with it. Like that, like 300, like all you want out of this sport is moments that you'll remember for the rest of your life. And like, I will remember 300 for the rest of my life because it was just so incredible. It was top to bottom. Like it was so well constructed and just so unbelievable in real time to watch all of that.
I don't know. I saw a video by Dana White that doesn't say that. Yeah. Oh, AK, real quick, AK, because I want a clean shot. So Dana White, if you're listening, AK, I want you to say how bad this card is. So we can.
Yes.
So clean shot and go.
UFC 301 is the worst fight card in combat sports history. This is an affront to me as a sports fan. Dana White, you should be friggin' ashamed of yourself. Shame on you, Dana. Boom. Shame on you.
We hit him with the black and white.
Oh, you're saving the.
You helped out the editing team. You helped them out.
Yeah. There you go. UFC production team. You're welcome.
It's amazing.
Killing the sport. I love it. All right. To the questions. All right. We didn't talk too much about this.
Our friend Achilles Jr. coming in some scary and sus weight cuts today. That is an understatement.
For anyone who isn't aware, the box of redemption was used by both Pantoja and Jose Aldo. So, make of that what you will. They both need the box. And as we saw, one fight was actually canceled. William Gomez apparently vomiting before he even stepped to the scale. He showed up in a t-shirt and shorts. Still wasn't even the normal official weigh-in regalia of just, being bare-chested. And that fight has now been canceled. So, yeah, it wasn't the smoothest weigh-ins this morning. Technically, everyone made weight. There was no official misses, but Gomez not in great shape. So he won't be fighting Thiago Silva. But I don't know about the other stuff. I mean, has Jose Aldo ever looked good at a weigh-in? Right?
No,
that's his
never.
story of his life. He always looked horrible. It looks horrible weigh-in days.
Isn't it wild how the storyline of him not making weight at 45 is completely just like, that seems like decades ago. Now he's making 35 easily.
Oh.
Well, not easily, but
I hated when he
seemingly less.
when he said he's going to move to bantamweight. I hated it. The bantamweight move. I was like, what? How? He found a way.
I beyond hated it. I am on record on plenty of shows just saying that this is the worst idea I've ever seen. Like I never understood how that man made 45, and then once it was the 35 thing, it was just like, this feels like a panic move, because I think Edson Barboza had done something similar.
Yeah,
it was just, it worked. It worked.
Yeah, we were all waiting for Aldo to go to 55.
That dude deserved the title shot at 35. That dude deserved the title shot at 35.
All right. We got another super chat here. Ooh, I have. Sorry.
See, it's good. Cigar asking, what is Alex's win-loss on predicting fights this year? I saw this question ahead of time.
I have the stats. Oh, you have it?
I do, of course. I saw this question ahead of time. Of course, I had to make sure I went to go find it. So, of course, Tapology.com, an amazing website. If you guys aren't visiting Tapology.com like 5 times a day, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Fantastic database. It gives you all-time stats, and also you can go year by year. So my all-time's at 61%. This also includes, I believe, Bellator fights and any other kind of cards that sometimes we predict for those fights as well. So 61%, which I have to imagine is a little worse than if you just went like chalk. I think if you just picked favorites for the past 5 years, you'd probably be around like 63, 64%. I'm guessing, but that's my assumption. So I'm probably below that. And this year I'm really down 59%. So 2% worse than usual. And considering we're talking about hundreds of fights here, that's really bad. That 2% is huge. I'm not doing great. Don't use my picks for gambling ever. Thank you. Throw it up there. Don't use my picks for gambling.
Hey, 2022, you had a good year. 2020, it was good. You had a good time. 2020.
2020, I was cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had that pandemic energy in 2020. You had nothing else to do but study.
I did. Yeah.
Right.
Casey, do you have it available to you? Because I know we're all in like an MMA fighting picks group on Tapology. Do you have it available? The year stats for all of us? Like who's leading? For the,
I can't.
It's gotta be me. It has to be me.
Let me see. For
Mike's calling the shot.
I'm at like 60. I have to be at like 64, 65% right now.
So let me look at Mike for this year is. One moment.
I won like the first 4 events.
Wow, Mike is 64% right now for this year.
What?
64, yeah.
Casey, how about yourself? You're on a hot streak. Casey has won our picks.
I am on a hot streak.
He's on a bit of a hot streak.
Yeah, you got 2 in a row.
Let me see where I'm at right now.
I had like my worst week. Oh no, second worst week last week.
And this year, I am 62% this year.
What?
Oh, man.
Pretty good.
62%.
You?
That's really good.
Yeah.
You?
What am I at? I'm just curious. What am I at?
Okay. All right, so everybody.
I'm so bad.
I know this is riveting
so
content.
All right, where's
they want to know. They want to laugh. They want to know.
Shaheen's always like sneaky good at this. Like he just quietly floats at like 68%.
Shaheen is 63.4% for this year.
Let's go.
Let's go. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then 2020.
I'm never winning the events. I'm always like second place.
Yeah.
I'm always finishing like second or third.
Yeah, in 2022, you were 64.6% in 2022. 2023, you didn't break 60%. You're 59.5%. But
I had a rough year last year.
Yeah. I didn't do last year wasn't too good for me either. I was like
have
58.
Have
It
you
was
seen
a weird
Jed?
year.
Have you seen Jed?
Jed. All right.
65%. He's at 65. I have here. Don't worry. You don't have to look it up. He's at 65. Not even that's rounding down. He's a 65.1. What?
Yeah, because he
I got
pays
something.
attention. He pays attention to those
You know what?
prelims on Apex.
He does.
I don't. I'm just,
He
dude. It's those prelims on Apex
Paid
cards
off.
that just murder me.
Yeah.
That's what
That's
it
the
is.
thing.
I'm
The
just
man's
like,
got
I
his
don't
money.
know.
The
I
man's
don't
got
know.
his money on like every card.
Yeah.
The man's
Yeah.
got
This
his
is
money
great.
riding on every card.
Yeah,
The stakes are
actually,
a little higher
year
for
by
him.
year, Jed. I don't like saying this. Actually, is probably
Don't
the
say it
best
out loud.
year.
Don't say it out loud.
No. Jed
Don't give him
sucks.
that kind of stuff.
Jed sucks. I don't know why he does the whole betting thing, and he just sucks.
There you go.
And Atlanta's not a real city. All right.
Wow.
Whoa,
Hashtag
whoa! I was
Picasso.
born in Atlanta. Get out of here with that.
Yeah, he got out of there because you moved to a real city, like suburbs of Phoenix or wherever you're at.
Good save. Good save.
All right.
Let's get a few more questions in there.
Of course. Oh,
Also, I do not like the bald slander going on the chat right now. I do not appreciate it. I see you.
Don't make me put on a New England sports hat.
This one's coming from our pal Jameek. Who's next at flyweight if Pantoja wins? That is a great question because I don't know the actual answer. It is a very weird division right now. I really want to say Manel Kopp, even though it's not. That man just can't.
It shouldn't be, but I think it might.
It shouldn't be.
I love Manel Kopp, and I don't think it should be.
It shouldn't be.
I thought this fight should have gone to Mikhaev, and I think Mikhaev should still get the next one.
Yeah,
I just don't think the fan base is behind him, man.
There was
Mikhaev,
nothing
maybe
behind
Al-Bazzi
Erceg.
can
Nothing was
sneak in
behind
there.
Erceg.
Yeah, but there was
Oh.
there was like neutral momentum towards Erceg. I think there was negative momentum towards Mikhaev.
I think the quality competition that Mikhaev's beat is so much higher than Steve Erceg. Like I said this kind of before we went on air. I feel this title shot was very contender series type of Dana picks, where in the past Dana you get a 30-26, like what's the homeboy in PFL, Locknane, like they don't sign him because he got a decision victory, but they'll sign a guy for 15-second knockout because that's more exciting in the moment. But we know who the better fighter was, and I still think Mikhaev is just a much better fighter than Erceg, and he shouldn't have got this title shot. And he had beating Alex Perez is a much bigger feat than knocking out Matt Schnell. That's all. So I hope it's still Mikhaev, but
dude, obviously you're right. But had they known that they weren't going to flip Pereira to Hill to UFC 300, and they knew Pantoja was going to have to be unequivocally the main event, I think they would have switched. I think they would have went Mikhaev. But I think they had it laid out that it doesn't really matter who Pantoja fights. Just throw him in the co-main event because you got Alex freaking Pereira fighting Jamal Hill in the main event. It's perfect. It lays out nicely. And then they switched it up and moved it to 300. And they're like, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. And throwing him in there with Vinnie Sigs. So
yeah, that's
And
all.
you say-
That's
I mean,
there's
all the
a-
UFC's fault. All the UFC's fault. That's all.
Yeah,
the
But
UFC's
there is
fault.
another
Fox
domino that
too.
we haven't. There's another domino we haven't even mentioned where the other man looming to headline this would have been Jailton Almeida against the Tom Aspinall type of situation, and
Yep.
that obviously fell apart too. So it's just this is kind of the worst case scenario on all cards for the UFC, and just what we ended up with.
All right. Just a comment from Trend Daddy.
that's right.
Preach.
Trinidad.
Preach. Hair is dumb. You're right.
Disagree.
Actually, you know what? Hair is not dumb. All hair is not dumb hair, no matter how big or little the hairs are. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is.
I
We're
don't
all
know.
together.
It seems like on this stream there are
King and I
two
are better.
people. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. On this stream there are two people who objectively have a better situation going on, and two who don't. So this one's coming from Beavis and Butthead. MMA fighting. If Paul Craig loses to Baralho, do you think he'll retire? I don't think so. Do you think retirement's in order for Paul Craig?
Is that
He's
a
just
thing?
trying to reinvent himself right now.
Yeah. Did I miss something he said at Media Day?
He talked
Oh.
retirement at 205, right? Like back in
Oh.
the day, a little bit. I'm
He
having
was
vague
going
memories of it.
to if he lost to Ankalaev, because he was just at that point. I think the thing for him was that point, he didn't feel like he was UFC quality, but then he got that
okay.
last second win, and it was the end of his
Yes.
contract, so he was able to get a contract. But that was a long time ago. I feel like he's
Okay.
in this.
I understand the logic behind it. It would be 2 straight losses, 4 of 5. But they're still giving him ranked guys. I think he would hang around. I'd also like to know his contract situation. If it's the last fight in his contract, obviously it probably changes things, but I didn't hear anything about that. So I don't think he's going to retire. He's been up there in age. He's been around a while, but he's also fought nothing but pretty much top 20 opponents for the last, almost his entire UFC career, outside of a couple of names. So he has no reason really to be discouraged. I would, if he does suffer like a really one-sided loss, which I don't think will happen. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I would like to see him sort of the matchmakers sort of recalibrate their expectations for him. Maybe put him some more fun fights outside the top 15, outside the top 20 even. So maybe have him be a test for some of the people coming up. But I'd be surprised if he retires.
Yeah, I would be shocked too. Unless he decides to retire for, he gets hit in the head a lot and he doesn't want any more of that kind of stuff. But as far as being a high-level competitor in the UFC, I think he always brings it, and he's a win big or lose big type guy, and I think the UFC likes that. And unless it's for financial or personal or health reasons, career-wise, there's no reason he should retire in a loss.
I think he's probably making more money now than he's ever made, so I just don't think that he would give that up right now.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's hit a couple more, and then we will get out of here.
Oh, this is actually interesting.
This one's coming from our pal Lazybed. How does a potential loss in his final UFC fight after already having an emotional Hall of Fame send-off affect our memories of him, Jose Aldo, obviously? I don't know that it does, right? Like, it feels to me, maybe you guys can step in if you feel otherwise, but to me it feels like there's only something to gain here for Jose rather than anything to lose. Like, even if he loses badly, I don't think that changes the way we look at him in any way.
Like we see
he's
him,
Jose freaking Aldo. He's 37 years old, or he's 38. Like,
when I was talking to Megan Anderson, she said there was some comparison to the Gutierrez Frankie Edgar fight, and I was like, yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. And then she's like, what if Jonathan Martinez just flying kneed Jose Aldo unconscious like Chris Gutierrez did to Frankie Edgar? And I was like, you bite your tongue. You never say that into a microphone. No, but seriously, can you like that would probably be.
It would be sad.
And I don't think like it would affect, because the question is affect our memories of him. That would affect my memory of him, because that's an unforgettable thing. Like, I love Frankie Edgar. Even before I got into the sport, he was my favorite fighter. So watching Chris Gutierrez flying knee him unconscious in his final fight at Madison Square Garden deep down hurt my soul. It really did. And like, when I think of Frankie Edgar, I don't think of the Gray Maynard fights. I think of him being unconscious at Madison Square Garden first.
Really?
I have to plow through that. But once I plow through that bad memory, dude, this is a recency bias.
I feel like that. Like I feel like I've wiped that. I feel like I've wiped that from my mind entirely. Like the same with like any of the BJ stuff. I mean, maybe the BJ stuff's a little more protracted, so that's a little different. But like, when I think of Frankie, that's like the 10th thing I think of. That is so far from my head.
We still talk about Shoguns. How Shogun went out. We didn't.
Well, because that was so dumb. That was just so dumb.
Aggressively dumb.
And this is potentially super dumb too. If it goes the way Jonathan Martinez wants it to go, it will look super dumb. I'm just.
Yeah, but
no, this to me isn't this thing. I don't think I don't like that comparison, because like, Jonathan Martinez is a dude. Like, Jonathan Martinez is a guy who's won 6 in a row. He's like a very real person in this division.
He could fight for a title someday. He could fight for a title someday.
A random guy that no one had heard of. He's just throwing.
I don't know. I think Jonathan Martinez is. I think
he's in much higher than Ihor was, for sure. Ihor, no one knew who he was. Martinez legitimately a ranked top 15 person. Like, Ihor was his first UFC fight, I think, right? Or second UFC fight. Like, he literally out of nowhere. Yeah.
Here's where I ultimately we have already seen the nadir of Jose Aldo. We have seen the worst possible moment for Jose Aldo. Like, that's it. Like anything that happens on Saturday is not going to be worse than 13 seconds. And so, like, that's it to me. If I think of a bad moment for him, it's going to be that. It's not going to be 38-year-old losing to like a young stud.
See, I don't think so. I think this would be the worst moment, because that was a title fight against prime Conor McGregor in the biggest fight of the year. Yeah, he lost, but this is the worst pay-per-view we've had in years on a thrown on this card because they needed to sell tickets. And if he gets knocked, I just think this is worse. I know what you're saying.
But that also means less people will hear about it. Honestly, frankly, if Jose Aldo, no,
isn't that even worse? Isn't that even worse? Like,
no, it's not. It's not.
Jose Aldo getting knocked out. Like, was it like a tree falls in the forest? No one's. I don't know what is that line.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. But that's.
I think that's even worse for Jose Aldo. He's just getting knocked out in these fights no one even cares about.
It would be like a tree falling in a forest and not.
Yeah. All right. I still don't like this fight. I understand. I admire your positivity, Shaheen. I like it.
Can I just say?
I don't think that these are the ones we remember.
Can I just say, when my best friend was attacking me by bringing up the Frankie Edgar knockout, I tried to cover my ears to not listen. I forgot I was wearing headphones, and in fact, so pressing them against my ears only increased the volume and really hurt me. My only thing I want to say about this is fighting after Hall of Fame induction. And look, BJ Penn did it, and
turned out great.
Turned out great. Nothing bad happened there. So I don't know. I don't know why it's even an issue.
Robbie Lawler was already in the Hall of Fame for a fight before.
But being in for a fight's different. I mean, I don't know. Superboy's in the Hall of Fame. If we want to talk about that, I don't buy that.
As he should be. Damn it.
Update
on my potential tease of weirdness. There will be no more weirdness.
Boo.
You want me to just rip up the Band-Aid? I'll rip up
if you can. If you can.
There was, what's the word I'm looking for? Efforts being made to possibly keep the Gomi fight still on, but ultimately it didn't end up happening. So that's what I was trying to confirm, because there were talks that potentially it would still happen. That they were trying, like, apparently he recovered very well and the vitals seemed fine and things of that nature, but in the end, not happening. So that's what I was awaiting. So it wasn't like Alex Pereira is fighting tomorrow or anything like that. So if you thought that, you're crazy. But I am sorry if you thought that. It was
rebook it. Now, that means we can rebook it. Rebook it for next week for UFC St. Louis.
What, John Silva versus Alex Pereira? Let's just do it. Open weight. Let's have a good time.
All right. Any more, Casey, or are we good?
I think we're good.
We went 90 minutes on this card, gentlemen.
Yeah. I can't believe we went an hour and a half on this. All right. Well, it's been fun, y'all. We appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. This has been the UFC 301 preview show. I got AK over there. I got Mike Heck below me. I got Casey, the most fearsome producer in the business, still undefeated. Keep it locked. It's MMA fighting all Saturday, all Sunday. We'll hit you with everything you need over the weekend. We got the pre-fight Q&A. We got the watch party. We got the post show. We got it all. We got the Brazilian beast, the best Brazilian reporter in the business, on the ground in Rio de Janeiro Cruz. And we love y'all. Enjoy the fights. As always, I don't know what is going on.
I don't like it.
Casey, get closer. Casey, bob your head up here.
He's patting your head.
We're officially off the rails. We're calling it. Have a great rest of your night, y'all. We love y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
So weird. All right.
Bye-bye.
Wait, hold on.
Happy birthday, AK.
Look at Vinnie Sigs in that poster.
Ah! He hates the UFC. He hates the UFC.
Make a shocked face for the thumbnail.
That's it.